Hi, English students. You're back for more of part two of the Odyssey. We are now on to Penelope. Imagine 20 years since you saw the person that you loved, that you married, that you had your child with. 20 years since you've seen her. Now, we are reading an epic, and an epic means, just like the word sounds, it's huge, it's enormous. Epics that you've probably heard of would be like Star Wars, the movie Star Wars, or even The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series, right? That's epic in proportion. It's enormous. So you've got adventure, you've got violence, you've got joyful scenes, you've got love. So we are tying together a lot of the loose ends that were formed way back when we heard about the Trojan War and Odysseus had to leave that long ago. So this section of Penelope, we've just learned that Odysseus, disguised as a beggar who's down in the courtyard and who's been treated very badly by Antinous, one of the suitors, Odysseus is going to now be called up to speak with Penelope herself. Penelope, when she sees him, she does only see him as a beggar, but she does get sort of a strange vibe off of him, a strange feeling. And let's begin. In the evening, Penelope questions the old beggar about himself. Friend, let me ask you first of all, who are you? Where do you come from? Of what nation and parents were you born? And he replied, My lady, never a man in the wide world should have a fault to find with you. Your name has gone out under heaven like the sweet honor of some God-fearing king who rules in equity over the strong. His black land bears both wheat and barley, fruit trees laden bright, new lambs at lambing time, and the deep sea gives great hauls of fish by his good strategy, so that his folks fare well. O dear lady, this being so, let it suffice to ask me of other matters, not of my blood and my homeland. Do not enforce me to recall my pain. My heart is sore, but I must not be found sitting in tears here in another's house. It's not well forever to be grieving. One of the maids might say, or you even might think that I had gotten maudlin over cups of wine, that I'm just emotional from drinking too much. But Penelope replies, Stranger, my looks, my face, my carriage, that means my posture, were soon lost or faded when the Achaeans crossed the sea to Troy. Odysseus, my lord, among the rest. If he returned, if he were here to care for me, I might be happily renowned. But grief instead heaven sent me, years of pain. Sons of the noblest families of the islands, Dulichium, Same, wooded Xanthus, with native Ithacans, are here to court me against my wish, and they consume this house. Can I give proper heed to a guest or to a suppliant or a herald in the realm's affairs? How could I, wasted with longing for Odysseus, while here they press for marriage? Ruses served my turn. Now, this is where I'm going to pause for just a moment and explain. Penelope has been being courted all of these years. The men keep saying, Your husband is dead. You have to choose a husband. You should do this. It is now time for you to do it. But she's been pulling a trick. She says, If I can weave a shroud, when I am done weaving this shroud, when I'm finished with it, then I will pick a husband. And during the day, she's up in her room and she's weaving on a giant loom, and it's an enormous and elaborate tapestry, a big shroud, like we heard about in the Athena myth, and she's weaving it. But at night, when the suitors are drunk and fast asleep, she goes back and she starts to take the thread out. She starts to untangle it. So every time it looks like she's getting very far and the suitors aren't paying close attention, she's been taking bits and pieces of it out. So I wanted to let you know. She says, ruses served my turn. I was using tricks to draw the time out, stretch it out. First, a close grained web. I had the happy thought, to set up weaving on my big loom in the hall. I said that day, 'Young men, my suitors, now my lord is dead.'" So she's pretending that she's accepting it. "Let me finish my weaving before I marry, or else my thread would have been spun in vain. It's a shroud I weave for Lord Laertes when cold death comes to lay him on his bier, and his bier, that's a place where you burn the body. The country wives would hold me in dishonor if he with all of his fortune lay unshrouded." And that, in saying that to the suitors, she says, "I reached their hearts that way, and they agreed. So every day I wove on the great loom, but every night by torchlight I unwove it. And so for 3 years I deceived the Achaeans, I had deceived the Greeks. But when the seasons brought a fourth year on, and as the months waned, the long months waned, and the long days were spent, through impudent folly, it was just a mistake, in came one of the slinking maids, and they caught me and clambered up to me at night, and I had no choice then but to finish the shroud. And now, as matters stand at last," she tells this beggar, "I have no strength left to evade a marriage. I cannot even find any further way. My parents urge it upon me, and my son will not stand by while they eat up his property. All of these suitors that are here, right? If I just choose one guy, then the rest of them will go away." He comprehends it. He understands, right? Being a full grown man, able to oversee the kind of house that Zeus would endow with honor. "But you two, confide in me. Tell me your ancestry. You were not born of mythic oak or stone." So now Penelope has poured her heart out to this beggar. And this is exactly what Odysseus wanted to hear. He wanted to hear that Penelope still wished for her husband to come home, and that she did not want to marry one of these suitors. So it says, Penelope again asks the beggar to tell about himself, and then he makes up a tale in which Odysseus is mentioned, like as if he had run into him, and he declares that Penelope's husband will soon be home. "You see, then," the beggar says, "he is alive and well, and headed homeward now. No more to be abroad far from his island, his dear wife and his son. Here is my sworn word for it. Witness this, God of the zenith, noblest of the gods, the Lord Odysseus' hearthfire now before me. I swear these things, and that they shall turn out as I say. Between this present dark, this nighttime, and one day's ebb, so before the end of the next day, after the wane before the crescent moon, Odysseus will come." And that's what he tells Penelope. Can you imagine if you were the wife, your husband had been gone for 20 years? How could you possibly believe this old beggar knows something? And that's where we'll end that section.